Welcome back. Sorry for the delay. Our next guest had a little bit of technical issues with a power outage, but what we're going to do is we're just going to blame the NSA because with our next guest coming up and this festival happening, they just didn't want the two to happen together. I think the universe is probably going to explode. So I'm going to introduce our next fantastic guest, Spike Cohen. He's going to be talking about disruptive politics. Spike Cohen is a Libertarian candidate for vice president, co-owner of Muddied Waters Media, host of My Fellow American, and co-host of the Muddied Waters of Freedom. He has made his life's work to spread the message of liberty, self-ownership, non-aggression, and voluntary solutions to the public, and to train and radicalize others to do the same. So welcome, Spike.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. You all good over there?
I appear to be good. Everyone appears to be good now. How are you? I apologize for the delay, but I am now here.
Not a problem. We're having some storms over here, and here's some thunder and lightning. Hopefully, I won't have the same issues you did. But we're just going to blame the NSA, right? Yeah.
I'm blaming the NSA because it is sunny here. So
yeah, then it's totally the NSA.
It felt very NSA, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to say it was the NSA. They didn't want you and Taxation as Theft Fest to come together because I think they probably just thought it was going to explode.
That's fair. Thanks a lot, NSA.
All right, so disruptive politics. I mean, we've had some disruptive politics happen like in the past 20 minutes, right?
Now we have politics that we're actually disrupting instead of disruption happening to our politics. Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. All right. So what do you have to say about disruptive politics, and what are you going to do if you become vice president of the United States?
Well, actually, so I have a little bit of a presentation I put together, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And then I guess we can talk some more about it and go through any questions the audience has or anything else. So, my name is Spike Cohen. I am here to talk to you about the politics of disruption and how to use the government and its pet media's weaknesses against them. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know a little bit more about me and why you're having to watch this. I started a web design company back in the 90s when I was a teenager, and I sold it 3 years ago so that I could focus my life on my true passion, which is sharing the message of liberty outside of libertarian circles to people who've never heard of ideas like self-ownership, non-aggression, property rights, voluntarism, using the sales and communication skills that I learned from starting, owning, and operating a successful business. And to that end, I became the host of My Fellow Americans, the co-host of the Muddied Waters of Freedom, and the co-owner of Muddied Waters Media, hosting and producing 2 live libertarian programs that is primarily targeted to normies, has taught me a lot about the importance of breaking free from what's normal to get people's attention so we can change their minds with our message. And what is our message? Well, it's very clear. You own yourself, your life, your body, your labor, and your property, and no one has the right to take any of those things from you, even if they sit in expensive buildings and sign fancy sheets of paper and put little pieces of metal on people and order them to take from you. Once you strip away all the pretense and the pageantry from government, you're left with people whose actions are no different from that of any other violent, sociopathic thief. And we have a long way to go. The state and the Republicrats and their cronies who operate it are running roughshod over us with their endless wars, their endless spying, their endless imprisonment of people for victimless crimes, their endless intrusion into every aspect of our lives, and endless taxation and debt spending to pay for all of it. Most people either support it because they don't know any better, or they feel utterly powerless to do anything about it. The only way we're ever going to have a chance to stop this is to let people know what they already innately know deep down to be true. Something is wrong. Things aren't supposed to be this way. The people who claim authority over us are fools and liars who can't be trusted to tie their own shoes, and we would be better off without them. So what do? Well, that's the fun part. The key to spreading the message of liberty is to get in front of as many people as possible, get them interested in us, lower their cognitive defenses so that they actually want to hear what we have to say, and then hit them with our actual message. And to do that, we have to subvert the entire electoral system and the corporate media that serves it. and make them serve our needs for once. We have to disrupt the system using their machine to do it. Liberty activists and Libertarian Party candidates, and just liberty people in general, often fall into one of two traps. They buy the corporate. The first one is they buy the government-sponsored corporate media's lie that if we just act respectable enough and give nice, passive interviews where we respond to their questions exactly how they want, this time they'll give us a seat at the table. And every time we fall for it, they give us just enough airtime to treat us like we're a joke, like we shouldn't be taken seriously, and that the public can safely ignore anything else we have to say. And they're not going to give us a seat at that table because they can't. If we're able to influence the cultural conversation and move the needle of public opinion away from statism and towards liberty, they'll lose everything. So they mock and ridicule us as we sit there and take it. Or we fall into the other trap, refusing to engage, because we recognize that this system is a cynical farce and that the government media are never going to treat us fairly. We completely disengage, not just from the government media, but from the public in general. We become bitter and jaded. We become antisocial. We call people bootlickers and copsuckers, and we forget to put our phones on mute too, which is also incredibly not helpful. And then, after we don't put our phones on mute, we call people bootlickers and copsuckers. If we do actually do an interview or engage in a conversation with normies, we hit them with nothing but agitprop, and then we snarl when they don't agree with us. Even though we're right, we come off as angry, argumentative, and petty. We make ourselves into hermits, even though our entire belief system is centered around maximizing human freedom. Whichever of these traps that we fall into, we're ultimately doing the same thing, alienating the public and letting the state and its pet media paint us as monsters. In order for us to beat them at their own game, we need to see their weaknesses. Government relies on everyone presuming that they have authority simply because they say so. And the media desperately needs people to watch their programming for ad revenue, especially TV media, because they are a dying medium. They need the money. No matter how much power and control they have, no matter how many traps they set for us, they rely on attention and belief in their authority, and they will shut out anyone who doesn't feed into that. So let's do it. Let's subvert and disrupt their system and leverage their weaknesses and their desire to be fed for our own good. How? With nonlinear messaging. I have two stories of how we can use nonlinear messaging to subvert and disrupt. The first one involves someone you probably already know very well, Vermin Supreme. Vermin has been at the forefront of subversion and disruption. He's the absolute godfather of nonlinear messaging for decades. I could spend several hours breaking down everything Vermin has accomplished, but for now, I'm going to give just one story. It's something called the New England College Convention. Every presidential election year, the NECC hosts all of the major presidential candidates. In 2016, they had both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. This year, they had Tulsi Gabbard, Liz Warren, Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer, and Vermin Supreme. Vermin wasn't only the first Libertarian presidential candidate they've invited. He was the first third-party candidate they've ever invited. They invited him because he's hilarious and because the students who planned the convention absolutely love him. Vermin showed up. He did his whole satirical shtick. He led the crowd in a nonsensical chant. He declared war on Narnia and then spent the rest of his time talking to the crowd about the libertarian philosophy, concepts like self-ownership and non-aggression, the Libertarian platform, and he invited people to join the Libertarian Party and help him on his campaign for president. And the audience loved it. A few days later, he was interviewed on Insider Magazine, which has a following of 80 million people. He wouldn't have gotten either of those opportunities if he had just been yet another libertarian activist or politician. And if by some fluke they had gotten that opportunity, they wouldn't have gotten nearly the same amount of attention because most people either get bored or offended when people talk about politics. But when Vermin does it, people love it because they're being entertained and they want more. The second story involves someone you may also probably know. Me. Yay. Back in December, I announced I would be Vermin Supreme's running mate. During that time, I unveiled my verbal agreement for an even better America, which includes such campaign promises as legalizing recreational plutonium, making all police officers dress up like Barney the dinosaur and sing his theme song to anyone they detain, giving everyone free cheesy bread, and arming your ponies with 20mm Vulcan cannons. That announcement got me the exact attention I wanted. And a few days later, I got my first request for a media interview to talk about what I really believe. when the news team came to my house right here, they came set up all in here, they explained that they'd interview me for about an hour, a half hour to an hour, and that they'd also interview someone to rebut everything I just said to them, and that they'd condense all of that down to about a minute and a half, 90 seconds, 20 or 30 seconds of which would be someone completely dismantling everything I just said. So I knew what I had to do. As soon as the interview started, I went right into promising everyone free ponies and free cheesy bread. I said that if the police officers failed to sing every part of the Barney theme song in key, that they'd have to let the detainee go without charge or citation. I talked about my plan to impeach the entire Supreme Court and replace him with a janitor whose name is Reginald and who will rule over all of us as king. And whenever they tried to change the subject to something serious, I tell them that once again, once we got the unlimited clean energy by putting all of the zombies on giant hamster wheels, the next logical question was, of course, what are we going to do with all of these offline nuclear power plants? What are we going to do with all of that plutonium? And the answer, of course, is whatever the hell you want to do. It's your body. Just stay away from me for the next 35,000 years. I did this to them for nearly 2 hours, and they left completely gobsmacked. What on earth were they going to do with all of that footage now that I just completely crapped all over their original plan? Well, I already knew what they were going to do with it. They aired it, and it became their most popular item on both their 7 o'clock and 11 o'clock programs. It got shared from their website thousands of times, and hundreds of people reached out to us on our website and our social media asking us, what the hell did we just watch? And why are you really doing this? And then I'd talk with them about the serious stuff because now I had their attention. Oh, and by the way, there was no one added to my story to rebut me because they couldn't find anyone who would go on the air and say, I'm against putting zombies on hamster wheels. So I got the entire segment. They just added like a 5-second clip of a local poli-sci professor saying something about how third parties have a long history in the US or whatever. And that interview led to many other interviews and appearances across the country, as well as college events with Emerson University, NYU Film and Art School, and Georgetown University. I turned a bunch of goofy one-liners into an increasing presence into the political world because I leveraged the media's need for viewership, and I lampooned the presumption of government authority simply by presenting myself as a politician who was doing exactly what all politicians do, making a bunch of promises that everyone knows we aren't going to keep. I could spend days giving all the examples of how disruptive, nonlinear, subversive messaging works in politics, including ones that aren't as funny or satirical. But the bottom line is this: people already know that something is wrong. Even though the government media is constantly telling them that everything is fine, they have it all under control, just obey and comply, and everything will turn out okay. They know that isn't true. They just need someone to help wake them up to the reality of why it isn't true, how we don't have to live this way, and how we can dismantle this system and live better, freer, safer, more fulfilling lives. And we can do that once we stop doing what the people in control want us to do and start doing what will change things. Let's be disruptive. And with that, I am happy to talk and answer any questions you have.
Okay. So with... looks like we have a surprise guest. Oh, talk about disruptive politics.
Hey, kid.
Hey.
I heard it was like Titty Fest, so I wanted to come by and, share some titty with you. Here we go, everybody. Free the titties, free the areola. It's your body. You can whip it out if you want to, wherever you want to, within reason, as long as it's not terribly offensive to other people, or all of a sudden maybe you'll get arrested for indecent exposure. However, in this case, sing those grandpa tits, will you, people?
Love it, guys. We have the most well-respected political satirist in the world, basically, and he's been running for president of the United States for the past 30 years. He is a absolute pro at doing this. Welcome, Vermin.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. This is a wonderful festival, a wonderful theme for a festival, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm certainly glad that Mr. Spike Cohen, my esteemed vice presidential candidate nominee, has been here to explain and explain what it is that exactly it is we're doing. I mean, because a lot of people, to the layman, to their average person on the street, it's like, what the heck is going on there? That man has a boot on his head. It's freaking me out. It's causing me to suffer some cognitive dissonance. And that's part of the story, of course, is creating this cognitive dissonance by presenting these disparate imageries, by trafficking in the absurdism of things, and trying to appeal and create this questioning of why. Okay, why? Well, but why not run an economy based on ponies, or why can we spend all this money on all these wars, and where's my pony? Yeah. And it's these type of questions that are inherently put forth in my ridiculous part of the platform planks. The mandatory toothbrushing. It quickly takes a jab at the nanny state. What kind of law must we put in place to keep you safe from yourself? And then it quickly devolves into the dystopian nightmare that it becomes, what have you, with the secret dental police and the dental re-education centers and the preventative dental maintenance detention facilities and the DNA gene splicing to create a race of winged monkeys to act as tooth fairy enforcers. And so, yes, we are definitely the communication strategy that I have been trafficking in and developing and utilizing and perfecting for these 30 years seems to do just that. It seems to really get past the literalists, the cognitive barriers that are put up by people to experience new things. It has allowed me to break through the media blackouts, if you will, and make it past the editors. And it's just I have found it to be a very successful method of doling out very important information. And of course, the humor and the joke and the goofiness, that's just the sizzly come on. And then the fluidity that my characters allowed me to develop just allows me to go from some of the most outrageous, over-the-top statements right back to reality. And yes, so we do believe that we can effectively harness this, that we can use humor as a weapon against the duopoly, humor and satire as a tool for outreach, as a tool for education, as a tool for recruitment. It is all of these things. And I hope, well, now that I don't know, I just heard that Justin Amash just dropped out of the race, and oh my goodness, I mean, that means I just might win.
I know. I was just about to ask Spike about what his thoughts were, and then you just came in.
Wait, what?
No,
yeah.
It's on the Twitter, dude. Justin Amash just announced that he is not running. He looked at it, he realized that he could not beat us, and he dropped his ass out. OMG! We are going all the way, buddy. Me and you into the White House. Woo! Woo!
Well, you're definitely getting the younger votes, that's for sure. Because right now, like my 5- and 7-year-old, you are their favorite candidate. Of course, I work for Dan Berman, so he's my favorite.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, probably. If the kids are watching, probably not.
No, my kids aren't watching. They're off for the weekend.
If the kids aren't watching, then keep doing it. No, so if the voting age was lowered, if the voting age was lowered, yeah, go ahead. If the voting age was lowered to even 14 or 15, we would win in a landslide. It wouldn't even be close. Which this is perfect. This view, perfect. It would be. I mean, it wouldn't even be close. So we're looking at. Oh man, it gets even better.
I know, like
Zoom him.
He can get it up. Like that's perky.
That is. Oh, he's perky. He's perky. Well, he's also. I mean,
this is what peak libertarian dad bod looks like, people.
This is peak libertarianism right now that we're experiencing.
Joseph, take notes.
Why Joseph dropped out. Come to think of it. So no, I mean, within a couple generations,
that's what I bring to the table, people. That's what you want to see in your nominee.
I'm very excited. Within even elect one, if there were like if we could fast forward 8 years, we'd have all of the youth vote, because all of these like 14 to 18-year-olds who, some of them will be voting in time. And of course, he's loved among 20-year-olds and all the way up. But really, mid to late teens and then early 20s are the people that have been growing up with him since they were little, and they are absolutely in love with him. And so, like, you know, I mean, anyone who is under the age of 30, almost always, if they look at all of the candidates, he's the first one that they go to because they remember him, they've known him for a long time, and they totally get his shtick. It doesn't have to be explained to them. They don't have to have it, you know, broken down and deconstructed to them. They just innately get it.
I think part of the beauty is, you know, they can enjoy it on the different levels. You know, when they're younger kids, they just think it's full on ridiculous. And
Right.
as they get a little bit more consciousness and a little bit of context, then it all becomes clear. And it is true that, you know, people who were, you know, young in 2012, when I first went viral, have grown up with me, and they do. You know, a lot of the teachers like to use me as an example in their political courses and all that good stuff. And you know, when high school teachers are using you as a teaching aid or to get the kids interested in what you're trying to teach them, I think that's I don't know. I think that I've been very blessed in developing something that has such a resonance and so many people find so wonderful, and has given me such vast reservoirs of political capital and goodwill across the political spectrum. I mean, that's another tricky thing, because when I, you know, struck it viral there in 2012, because there was, it was not perceived to be a partisan attack. I wasn't singling out an individual candidate or a party even, but it was just this much broader critique. And as such, it was warmly appreciated just from left to right and everywhere in between.
Yeah, my daughter, who is 5, she absolutely loves your free pony project and your policy on that. And my son, who's my better teeth brusher, like he flosses, like he's been doing that since he was 2, which on his own, which is amazing. So he likes that as well. My daughter, on the other hand, is terrified of your mandatory tooth fairies and all that kind of stuff.
She should be, quite frankly. She should be.
It's going to be a new normal. You know, the flying monkey comes and you brush your teeth, or there's going to be problems. It is what it is. Like, I mean, we adapt to new normals.
Secret dental checkpoints every couple hundred yards, not a problem. Show them your dental records.
The children figure out how to adapt to new normals because it's just, you know, they don't have to process it. It just is. The flying monkey's there and brush your teeth.
Is it any real problem to flip up your lip while you flip up your pony's lip to show your matching barcode tattoos? Not at all.
No.
It's not egregious. It's not excessive.
These are all perfectly reasonable ideas. Listen, so the other thing is, when you see your pony, you wake up every day and you go in and you know, hold your pony, and as one is wont to do when you have one, and you flip up and you see those beautiful pony teeth, you are going to be inspired to have teeth that they'll never be as big and they'll never be as beautiful, but they could possibly be as white. And that's the big thing. That's going to be a big inspiration. That and the flying monkey and the checkpoints and all of it works together. It's very stick and carrot. The stick is the monkey, and the carrot is the horse's teeth.
But with the advances in human pony dental medicine, it is not inconceivable to one day perhaps have a full set of pony teeth put in your mouth.
Well, I mean, that's the world we all dream for, yeah.
Well, hopefully in Vermont, they won't add a law stating that anybody who wants those kinds of dentures have to run out and get their husband's written permission.
I would hope not. I would.
Yeah.
Is that what a Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, talk about ridiculousness.
Sanders law?
Yeah, talk about ridiculousness. Vermont has a law that a woman has to gain her husband's written permission to seek out dentures.
Is that something that Bernie Sanders put in?
That sounds like a Bernie Sanders.
I have no idea. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it. Obviously, people aren't flocking to go get their husband's permission for dentures, but it was I think it still is a law on the books in Vermont. So it's just, you know, there you go. You could look at that.
One of those situations where the government is essentially forcing you to break the law, putting you in a position where you are violating the law. I mean, in many states across America where cannabis is not legal, people are forced into a situation where they are violating the law every day. You know, when they're, you know, speed limits are just a little too low or not realistic, everybody is a scofflaw. You know, the government creates criminals, and that's just a fact. And the more ridiculous and overreaching statutes and laws they put in, a case in point, the mandatory toothbrushing itself, that was based on the mandatory seatbelt laws that were being put in the 80s. And when they first came through, oh, it's just a law, we're not going to enforce it, you know, we're not going to, you know, and then it became click it or ticket. And then it's like, okay, well, if we pull you over for some other infraction, then we don't, and you're not buckled in, we will write you a ticket. And now it is once again slid to the point where you can be pulled over specifically for either not wearing a seatbelt or having the cop say that he thought you were not wearing your seatbelt.
Or having anyone that you're driving with not wearing a seatbelt, or the suspicion that they weren't wearing a seatbelt. So basically, we can just pull you over just because they want to. So
yeah, it starts with a little nanny state. Oh yeah, we're concerned about you, and then it's like, up against the wall, motherfucker, we're gonna shoot you. Yeah. Whoopsie, I felt scared.
Yeah, I was scared. I was scared.
Okay, so quick question for both of y'all. Can you give us an idea or a story of when you have come into contact with the police, and were you able to fight it, or was it, do you have a ridiculous cop story?
My ridiculous cop stories are all infuriating. He has much more fun, ridiculous cop stories, so I'll let him start.
Yes, I've been very, very lucky, and I've been arrested very few times for the things that I do and the situations that I involve myself. But I think, you know, in New Hampshire recently, actually, it was 2016. It was the Chris Christie campaign. And we were dogging Christie, and we were at his campaign headquarters, and they were trying to turn around his bus. And this gentleman comes up to me, and to the layman, he would be like, "Oh no, it's a Secret Service guy. Look at his short hair and his suit and little button." But I realized, I knew for a fact that Chris Christie did not have Secret Service protection. And so I immediately said, "Where are you from?" And he goes, "New Jersey." And I said, "You have no jurisdiction here. You cannot tell me what to do." And as a result, he immediately backed off and got himself a state trooper who could try and enforce that stuff. And that was sort of a spinoff of, you know, '96 at the Chicago National DNC convention. And that is where I learned the magic phrase. I was working the delegate gate. The delegates are coming in. I'm proselytizing nonsense to them. And this cop comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, sir, I'd like to ask you to move." And something clicked in my head. And I said, "Well, thank you very much for asking me, officer. I'm very happy where I am." And that was a revelation and an amazing thing that it changed my life. It was a moment that changed my life. Yes. And I realized, and now it gets to the point where, you know, whether it's the Secret Service, state cop, any cop that comes up and asks me to do something, I immediately cut to the chase and say, "Listen, if it is a simple request, I am not going to grant that request. If it is a lawful order that you are clearly going to, or you make it clear that I am risking arrest if I do not obey, then I will consider and reassess, and we will discuss it. But if it is just a simple request, well, you can pretty much fuck off." And that's I've had great success with that.
Well, and I actually have an example of that with Vermin in the New Hampshire primaries. When we were up there in New Hampshire, we were doing a thing where we were kind of going around the media circuit with our whole, you know, menagerie there. I had a pony head on a stick that I carried around like a scepter to herald in the arrival of our new president. And
we had live ponies. We had live ponies.
We had the whole thing. And so what we found out was really effective.
Lord Buckethead. We had Lord Buckethead with us.
Buckethead was there. It was insane. It was, you know, what made Vermin famous, but on like 10, like, I mean, on a completely, or on 12, on a completely different level. And one of the things we found that was really effective was, so when the media is doing an interview, they got the camera here and they're both sitting on either sides of the camera, and they're looking ahead so that they can have the scene of, you know, New Hampshire behind them. Well, we'd get behind them and we'd do our whole thing. We'd have all of our Vermin Supreme signs and our ponies and our pony heads and everything like that. We didn't make any noise. We'd just be like, hey, we like that. We do this. And so, and again, we're on public property. there's nothing they can do about this. They're not going to stop a live broadcast of, you know, PBS or CNN or MSNBC because there's some people behind them doing all this thing. So we're getting free ad time, free earned media. And so when we do that, after a while, the police would show up and say, can you move along? And we'd say, what's going on? We're just exercising our First Amendment right to peaceful assembly and freedom of speech. And they go, well, you know, just to show respect. And we'd say, we're being incredibly respectful. Would you ask the media to please be respectful of our space? They keep putting their cameras in front of our situation here. We're just trying to make the best of it and saying hi to everyone, but it's really starting to concern us because they're putting tents everywhere and they've got cameras everywhere. And eventually the police just left us alone because we weren't doing anything illegal and we weren't doing anything that was harming anyone. We were being disruptive, but not in a way that they could actually do anything about. We were being politically disruptive, no more so than, you know, putting a tent in the middle of the park and you know, setting cameras up and live streaming the whole thing. But, you know, that was an example where the police presumed that, you know, the government pet media was the ones in the right, and anyone who, you know, didn't keep with the decorum was in the wrong. And we just simply said, no, we're here doing our thing and we're not hurting anyone or breaking any laws. So no, we're going to stay right here and continue doing the thing.
Another time during the inauguration in 2016, there was they arrested a whole bunch of protesters, the J20 protesters. And I remember going up there, and once again, it's all about exuding command authority, you know, trying to convince the police and the right police that I am fully in charge. And I went up there and just like, you know, I'm Vermin Supreme. I'm running for president of America, and I am also an amateur hostage negotiator, and I am here to negotiate these hostages' release. And I immediately went into this whole routine, and I was blasting out the Star Spangled Banner for the bullhorn, and it really bucked up the protesters' spirits, who were at that point, they were all kettled and just waiting to be transported away. Oh, at the G8 in Pittsburgh, it was when I first discovered this amazing little psyops technique. And it was like I was in this park and I was hanging back a little bit because I have that situational awareness, and I sort of saw what's going to happen. And so they were all the protesters and demonstrators were on the street. It was a fuck the police event. And, you know, the police had made their announcement declaring it unlawful, and they were starting to march on the protesters. So it was obviously this very tense moment where, like, and the police are banging on their shields, move, doing that.
Right.
And so I had my bullhorn, and I had that little song, that little button that played this chicken dance that I played during the 2012 closing statements. And so I started playing the chicken dance full blast over the bullhorn, and the riot police had to continue to try to look intimidating while they were being forced into this total crazy soundtrack. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And it changed the dynamic to this point where it totally blew apart all the fear and tension that the demonstrators were experiencing as the police were coming up on them. Yeah. And I ran into one of my friends weeks later, and he told me that it was the most fun that he ever had getting pepper sprayed. And that song, it carried over into the transport vehicles, and the people who were handcuffed in these police transport vehicles were all singing the song, boom, 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 stamping their feet, and it carried over into the jails, and it became this act of solidarity that everybody had in common, which was just this ridiculous way of making the police look ridiculous in doing their most intimidating bullshit violence. So that was funny, and yet it was a very effective tool to literally change reality by using these techniques.
Yeah, exposing the absurdity of the whole spectacle, and not the absurdity of the people protesting, but of the people who show up with fancy uniforms and, you know, pretend that they have authority because it says that they can do this. And you know, using just some simple refusal and just some simple adding some satirical and lampooning elements to demonstrate that it's all bullshit. There's no reason to think that these people have authority simply because they all showed up in forces and do what we say. So
I had a great one. I had at Chicago at the NATO summit in 2012, and I don't. It wasn't so funny, but it was funny to me. And essentially, they had this long line of police. I mean, several hundred, and it wasn't totally clear whether we were kettled or not. It wasn't totally clear if we were being detained. I knew we were not being detained, but I went up to each cop one at a time and looked at them in the eye and said, "Excuse me, am I being detained? Am I free to go?" And as it turned out, none of the line cops knew. They did not know because it was not their job to know. It was their superior's job. And so I was just sort of using this to make a point to them that they didn't really know even why they were there. And then I might, you know, and then, so I would go down this line, and about, you know, I had 20 cops who could answer me that they did not know if I was free to go. They did not know.
Yeah.
They didn't know if and so, and occasionally, and then I would get to a sergeant, and the sergeant would say, "Oh, you're free to go." And then I might talk to the cops and just reinforce the fact that that they're tools and pawns and class traitors and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, guys, we're going to have to wrap up. We've got 4 minutes because we've got another speaker coming on. We're not going to take a break. I think we're going to end up just going straight into the next speaker because we want to give, obviously, y'all some amazing time, especially since we had some technical difficulties. Spike, the NSA
yeah.
again. NSA.
Thanks again. Thanks again, NSA.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, quick question.
All the way.
You know, I'm wearing a swimsuit. I think that's pretty radical. I've got my taxationist theft skirt, and I've got my pineapple earrings. I have my hair purple.
Earrings. Yeah.
I've got my purple hair, and that's become kind of like a little bit of a trademark for me. And then, and I'm always wearing red lipstick. What can I do to like radicalize my look? I want fashion advice from the two of y'all.
Well, as someone who refuses to pander to you or anyone else here, I would just like to say that you might want to get some headwear because your head's looking a little naked. You know, Vermin's got his boot. I've got this fancy hat that you can buy over at taxationistheft.cards. I've heard that you can get that. I've also got my swag here. I probably, you know, I'm on a competing campaign and wearing Vermin 2020 stuff. That's probably not good. But you know, you got the End the Drug War and Taxation is Theft that I wear everywhere. Ever since I first met Dan. So you could do something like that. Overall, you got a pretty good ensemble going there, though, I would say.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, certainly. Yes, I would go to verminsupreme2020.com and do look at our merchandise site. We have many very exciting merchandise accoutrements. We have the Vermin Spray's face pins that the kids love so much. That's a very wonderful accent. The Vermin Supreme T-shirts. And so, yes, all those things. And might want to consider, you know, some sort of third eye tattoo, maybe. That would be pretty striking and quite a conversation starter. Absolutely.
Well, as a makeup artist, that just means I'll be able to be able to work more of my art.
Oh, maybe a temporary third eye tattoo, but when in doubt,
go like a henna. Yeah.
Okay, henna. Oh, I can do henna. All right, we'll go with that.
But you have to like reapply it every day.
Oh, okay. All right.
And make it blink. And if you could get the 3D blinky effect, that would be super.
Yeah,
cool.
If you can really like learn to isolate those muscles so that it actually blinks, that'll really drive it home.
Well, see, the problem is I want to try to look young, so I really don't want to mess with these. Like, I don't want them to blink, you know.
Oh, okay. Then
so that's what women in their 30s. That's what women in their 30s try to avoid.
Now that the hair coloring thing has become so ubiquitous, it is very difficult. I remember when I was a kid, there was like a after school movie, the kid with the green hair, and he was a total freak because it was just so unheard of. And now everybody's got the colored hair, so you got to really step up the game. But mohawk, I would go mohawk because that just takes a bottle of Elmer glue and you could spike that stuff up. And boy,
well, I don't know if you know how long my hair is, but it is freaking long. I've always had it long.
And speaking of spiking it up, if you go to Vermin Supreme 2020 and go to our store, there is a spike shirt you can buy. It's just my face looking at you, not terribly happy. My name's not on it. There's no context whatsoever. It's just a picture of my head. Only $19.50 including shipping. Or I don't think that does include shipping, but it's only $19.50. And then you too can walk around with my face looking like this And when people go up to you and they say, "Who's that?" you can say, "That's Spike Cohen. You don't know?" And then they'll go, "Yeah, of course I know. I just couldn't tell from that picture that was Spike Cohen, but I knew that."
And then eventually you might discard of it, and it might end up in some third world country, and it will cause some great confusion and perhaps riots.
Greater confusion to the public.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at Taxationist Theft Fest. We really appreciate it. It's at the top of the hour, so we are going to go right into our next guest, who is Nicholas Cuball Wildstar. And again, thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming in and disrupting, you know, a bit of our politics today. We really appreciate it. And yes, Tit Fest!
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Bye.